meeting started. Pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Cody, roll call, please.
Supervisor Gunning?
Here.
Treasurer Rice? Here. Trustee Hauk?
Here.
Trustee Micus?
Here.
Trustee Lannon?
Here.
Trustee Worley?
Here.
Clerk Cody here.
All right, this time we need to have an approval for the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second, discussion. All right, seeing none. All in favor of approving the agenda as is, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda approved. We move on to item 5, presentations. This will be a 2020 census presentation by, is it Chloe?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chloe Updegraff?
Yes.
Updegraff.
And just a little background while Ms. Undergraff is coming up. The 2020 census, that's a really important thing for everybody, and particularly local governments. We get a lot of money based on populations, those sort of things. The Mount Pleasant Area Community Foundation organized the Isabella County Census Advisory Committee, and that committee is to provide guidance to this Great Lakes Bay regional hub on their 2020 census efforts. And this local committee's role is to advocate and to work with the media and the communities in terms of outreach to try to, ultimately the goal is that there's as a complete and accurate count as possible. Union Township is part of that effort, and Ms. Updegraff, who's with the Great Lakes Bay Region Census, she's the Census Hub Coordinator, is here to make a presentation on the efforts of that regional hub, the role Isabella County has to play in that, and let you take it from here.
Perfect. Thank you. I just want to make sure that you all got the handouts. We have one for Isabella County, one that's the presentation. Okay, awesome. So thank you for the introduction, and thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk about what we're doing with this hub. As you guys probably already know, the census is a constitutionally mandated federal government effort that happens every 10 years to count every resident of the United States. So what we're doing is, obviously the goal is the same. We want a complete and accurate count within this region. But what we're doing is kind of more of an on-the-ground effort, really trying to capture every person, especially those that usually get overlooked or undercounted. And so my background is in public health. I'm really taking this on as a public health effort. And what we'll talk about in a minute is, the census data, how it's used in so many different programs that folks in our community depend on. And so I'm taking this on as a public health endeavor, and really trying to incorporate everyone within the community with this effort. So just a little bit of background on this census. We've got some constraints. As far as the Census Bureau is concerned, they're going to an online first model this time around. And that's great for a lot of us because we can take the census right on our phone. We can take it on an iPad, on a computer. That is awesome. But if we think about a lot of the folks that live within this county and then within the region as a whole, we have a lot of people that don't have access to the internet. We have a lot of people that don't have access to technology at home. And so right away, even though that's a plus in some ways that this is going online, a lot of folks are immediately going to be left out with this effort. In addition, the census has some budgetary constraints, so they've had to cut back quite a bit on their local staff. They'll still have local staff, they'll still have local presence here, but it's going to be drastically cut back from what we've seen in years past. And so then that door-to-door outreach will be decreased as well. And then in addition to that, just what we have regionally is an increasingly older, more diverse and lower income population. And so those folks are, of course, going to be harder to reach when we're talking about an online first model and when we're talking about census budget being scaled back so much. I talked about folks having limited access to technology. That is definitely a fear, and it's something that we're going to try to address with our hub. And then we also have a lot of folks that are really uncomfortable engaging with the government, at least with the federal government. And now that's where local governments come in. You guys know this much better than I do, but folks trust their local government much more than any other level of government. And so what we're hoping with this endeavor is that we can really reach folks from a local perspective, and it doesn't feel like the federal government coming in and trying to get folks' information, which people might be uncomfortable with. Now, as far as a region, we have a lot at stake. In Isabella County, for example, the annual federal funding that we have at risk is $104 million. Statewide, this is going to affect Michigan pretty negatively if we don't get this right. So just a 1% undercount in Michigan will cost our state $1 billion. And so that's why, we're seeing a lot going on statewide from these local hubs forming. We've got about 13 or so throughout the state. The Governor's Complete Count Committee. Also, our state Senate and state House appropriated a good amount of money to this region as well, which is amazing because we can make sure that Saginaw, Midland, Bay, and Isabella, the coverage of our hub, really make sure that we get this right. So, as far as what census data is used for, it's very widespread. Most people don't know just the ins and outs of how this is all used. The important thing for us to think about is that this is dollars and cents for our community. This is programs that people depend on. We're talking about, Medicare. We're talking about SNAP and WIC food assistance, free and reduced lunches at schools, Section 8 housing, children's special health care, energy assistance, all of these programs that folks in our community are dependent on. And then of course funding for our schools in general, we all care about that. Funding for our roads, we all care about that too. And so the census kind of makes its way into all of these programs and it's so widespread. And I think a lot of folks don't realize, how impactful this is just for our community, not just those social safety net programs, but it is our schools, it's our roads, it's stuff that we all care about. So as far as local governments are concerned, census has a huge impact on that as well. Local governments get about $800 billion in federal investment, and that's across states, counties, and cities. We have all kinds of different programs that benefit from that. You guys could probably tell me better than I can tell you, so I'll leave it there. But it's also our voice in Washington, D.C., of course, our voice in Lansing as well. Michigan was the only state in 2010 to lose a seat in the House of Representatives. The predictions for this time around are that Michigan could lose an additional 2 seats. We know we were hit hard in the recession. We know that folks have left. But I think that with the reaching out, starting early, getting all kinds of groups involved with this, we can make sure that folks are not only educated as to why this is important, but once March of 2020 rolls around, people are ready to start taking the census. They understand that it's dollars and cents for our community. They understand, our local communities are impacted by this. It's not just our voice in DC. It's not just our voice in Lansing. This is our local community that's going to benefit. So we've got a lot of constraints, a lot of things kind of that make this feel like an uphill battle. But really, we're trying to not see it as that. We're trying to see this as an opportunity for a big win for this region. We've got a lot of foundational support throughout the state as well as locally. All 4 of our area community foundations are supporting this effort. So Saginaw, Midland, Bay, and Mount Pleasant Area Community Foundation are all on board with this. Some really great donors like the Kellogg Foundation, Dow, so really great backing. And then I also mentioned the state of Michigan appropriating funds to our region as well, which is really great. And the reason for that is, like I said, this is dollars and cents for our community. So for each person that does not take part in the census, each person that's not counted, we lose $1,800. And that's multiplied per person who doesn't take part, multiplied by that 10-year period of the census. So we can quickly see how impactful this is going to be for our community. And it's our goal that we get this right and we don't lose out on that $1,800 of important funding. So this is a busy one. I'm sorry about that. I don't like to do too busy of a slide, but really this talks about how are we going to do this? How are we going to make sure that we get a fair and accurate count with this region? It starts with our partnerships, mobilizing our nonprofits, especially those that are working with the most underserved populations in our community, making sure that folks are educated, making sure that folks are aware why this is so important, creating partnerships, having trainings and tools available for nonprofits. We're also awarding grants to nonprofits within the region in each county. And our goal is that those nonprofits, especially, like I said, the ones serving the most underserved populations, which always end up being the hardest to count populations or those that are the most undercounted in the census, if we can mobilize those nonprofits, get some funds in their hands to really reach their folks, we can really be successful with this effort and not leave dollars and cents on the table that our community needs. So I need help with this. We've got advisory committees for each county, and they're kind of helping guide the work, making sure that we're not leaving any stone unturned as far as folks that we're reaching. But, going back to what I said earlier, folks really trust their local government officials. And so I could really use the help on, outreaching, educating constituents, newsletter stuff, posts on social media. We've talked about in other townships potentially, sending stuff out when taxes are sent out in the winter. Really anything that we can do to reach folks and make sure that they're counted, to make sure that when they get that mailer from the census that they don't just throw it away. We want people to understand how important this is for our community. I think most people really don't know. The more people I talk to, the more I realize people have no idea the impact that this will have on our community. And especially in Mount Pleasant, with the city being right at that 25,000 population level, we're really close to dipping down below that. And so especially here, we need to make sure that we get this right. And so, I'm here to just kind of talk to you guys and educate you as far as what we're doing as a hub. But going down the road, I'm one person. I cannot possibly reach everybody. And so really just wanting to kind of get this out there and then ask for any help or suggestions that you guys have to make sure that we can reach folks in Isabella County. So that is the gist of the hub. We are really trying to make this an on-the-ground, local effort that encompasses everyone within this region. We've got a lot at stake, $104 million of federal funding that could be at risk in Isabella County. Breaks down to about $1,800 per person. So this really is dollars and cents for our community. It's our voice in Washington, D.C. It's our voice in Lansing. This is really important for our region that we get this right. So I really appreciate you guys giving me the time here to kind of discuss what we're doing, kind of share what we're doing with partnerships and outreach, and if there's any suggestions or thoughts on how we can make sure we're reaching, especially the hardest to reach folks. I'm all ears on that. But thank you for having me, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to be here tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I'll just, this handout is kind of something that we've created to just highlight really what's at stake here in Isabella County, where the census is so vital in our community, health, economic development, political power, all of that stuff. And so if that's something that we can have available for folks when they come in here, that would be great. And if there are suggestions or thoughts on making sure we can especially reach folks with low internet access, low-income households, I'd appreciate it. Yeah.
What about like dial-a-ride? Can you give the drivers on dial-a-ride?
That's a great idea.
information?
That's a great idea. We have just hired a marketing kind of person to kind of help with some of that stuff to make sure that we're in every spot that we can be. That's a great idea. It's definitely something I can pass along. If it's info on the bus or on the outside, whatever it is, yeah.
There's a lot
That's a
of
great
those
suggestion.
people, are lower,
Mm-hmm.
don't have cars and stuff.
Yep. That's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Chloe, it seems that the issue about the citizenship question, which was ruled unconstitutional by the courts and therefore not allowed in the census. But it seems that some of the constraints that you've outlined here are accomplishing that same purpose.
Yes.
Largely online, decreased regional and local census offices by 50%, and you're having to scale back on door-to-door outreach. The same people that was supposed to somehow deter from doing the census is now again being accomplished through this means. What do you see as a way to overcome these obstacles? Because these obstacles are sometimes imposed for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to the federal government, why they've done some of this or what went into some of these choices. But what I can say is our effort here locally is based on those constraints. When this was first kind of being talked about, probably last year, it was through the Michigan Nonprofit Association, Council of Michigan Foundations. I mean, the writing was on the wall that this census was not going to be very successful. And so the thought was, okay, what can we do as local communities to make sure that it is, to make sure that we're still reaching folks? Something like this has really never been done before. There's been some nonprofit engagement in past censuses, but nothing to this extent. And so what we are trying to do is overcome those barriers, reach the populations that are always left out or always undercounted, and especially targeting our grant dollars within the region. Like I said, we've got some great financial support from both the state and from local nonprofits to make sure that we make this happen. I mean, I'm not trying to, make it sound like it's all sunshine and rainbows. We've definitely got some barriers for sure. But we feel like if we can establish some really great partnerships with, the homeless shelter, the library, places that people trust, that engage with folks on a regular basis, if we can, empower them with both money and training and support to reach folks, we can definitely overcome some of these barriers. But I mean, it's definitely a valid point. The census never is perfect, and this time around, it's going to be a little bit tougher. But with a local effort like this, working with organizations that people trust, we feel like we can overcome some of that.
I think it's what makes Bill's suggestion a very good one, because he's thinking outside the box, doing dial ride. So I think wherever it can be targeted where people that don't have the means to be online and aren't going to be served, how can they be informed, and the necessity and the importance of contributing to the census.
Yep.
And also maybe at some point, if you can come, if there's anything more that we can do as a board, as a government agency, to try to encourage making sure that our citizens do the census. However we can be
Thank you.
helpful, I would appreciate that.
Greatly appreciate that. And some of the things that have come up from other townships, definitely something about the census within tax mailings or within newsletters out to folks. That's not going to hit everybody by any means. Folks have talked about having something available when residents come into the township hall, something where they can take the census there if they don't have internet at home. So anything like that where we can make sure that we're reaching folks, making sure that nobody's left out. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Have you been to the Commission on Aging? Talk to them more there?
I spoke there when I first started, probably 6 months ago, but a lot has changed since then. And yeah, I mean, I'd love to go back. That would be a great target for us for grants. Especially the older adult population.
Yes.
Most likely not having access or maybe not wanting to use the internet. We want to make sure that we're reaching out to them, that they have the option to call in if they want to, or if there's someone that can help them using an iPad. That's a goal for sure. Yeah.
All right.
Any other thoughts, questions, ideas on who I need to be talking to?
We'll get a banner put up right there, remember the census.
Yeah.
It's on TV.
Be counted.
Yes,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah, no, anything that we can do to have some visibility. The last thing I want is that people get their one mailer from the census and toss it out or don't want to take the time. We want folks to understand that it's short, but it's impactful. It means a lot for our community. Maybe not everyone is utilizing these programs, but everyone cares about our schools. Everyone cares about our roads. And, this is dollars and cents for our community. So we want to make sure that folks are aware of that.
Now, are you spending your time in Isabella County, or are you part of the spending your time in the Great Lakes Bay?
I am
region?
covering the Great Lakes Bay region, so I'm funded in all 4 counties. So Saginaw, Midland, Bay, and Isabella. That's the regional hub. I know that there's some different definitions of the Great Lakes Bay region, but ours is the 4-county
Okay.
coverage.
I see your email contact information.
Mhm.
Is that the one number to look up and learn about this information?
Yeah, and there's a
To
couple other
communicate
spots to
with
go.
you?
So the Community Foundation websites, they all have something on there that kind of is talking about this endeavor and what we're trying to do. There's BeCountedMI2020.com. That's kind of the statewide, hub nonprofit effort. So there's a couple spots where we've got some visibility. And like I said, we just hired a marketing person, so we want to make sure that visibility increases. But right now, it's the Community Foundation's website.
And the count takes place, the final count, in March of 2020?
Starting, yep, I'm sorry, I didn't even say that.
You touched base on it.
Yeah, March through July of 2020 is our window. So we've got a fairly short window when we're thinking about some of the populations we're trying to reach. Pretty short time frame. So we want to make sure that once March 2020 rolls around, folks are ready to go take the census.
Thank you.
I think we're in
Thank
better
you.
shape with your dynamic and passionate discussion about
Thank
the
you.
importance of the census.
Thank you so much, and thank you guys for making the time for me tonight. And if there are any other suggestions, please email me. I'm all ears on making sure that we get this right. So, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, takes us to item 7, public comment. This is going to be restricted to 3 minutes regarding items on this agenda. Going once, going twice, going thrice. Close public comment and move on to reports and board comments. I don't believe we have one pesky little opening, I think, on the sidewalk or the sustainability, Phil. It's one you're on, I know that.
Yeah, that's right. And pesky indeed.
8:15, 19, Sherry. Sidewalks.
Let's see, is that sustainability or is that the
Sidewalks.
sidewalk?
Sustainability.
Sustainability, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right,
There's
we'll just keep working on that. All right, so let's move on to board reports. And I guess we'll start off over on Norm's side.
Okay, I don't have anything specific to report in terms of the tribe. However, I want to thank all the board members that got in your golds for the global ends that were coming in. I came in on Friday and dropped off a three-page thing for Mark. I don't know if that's been correlated yet to get to you. But what I'd like to do is that once we have all those tabulated, I would then probably have a time for me to go out to the tribe or talk with them, have a meeting to find out what are some of the things that they're interested in terms of the 2%. So there were the suggestions that have come through were some really good ones. Hopefully I threw in some additional, and others have done that. And when the time comes, we'll follow up with trying to see what jives with, collaborating with the tribe on this as well. So.
At the last city meeting, they had an update on the 2019 Baseball Little League by Jim McBride, which I missed the last one that was here, so it was nice I got to watch that. And a presentation from the Swim Friends of Mid-Michigan regarding the Aquatic Center. And then the quarterly update from Jim McBride, Then they had a public hearing on the creation of neighborhood enterprise zone. No action was taken. They had a public hearing on the creation of the commercial redevelopment district, and they approved the resolution for that.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Nothing today?
Bill?
I went to a road commission meeting last Thursday morning. They wound up doing 44 miles of gravel roads, rehabbing gravel roads. That's most that they've done since they started the program. I guess that program's going along pretty good. They talked about Lincoln out here between Pickard and M20. Said they might get started on it yet this week. They did put the culverts across. So he said they might get started on it late this week, but I see they haven't started anything yet. But then they're doing 39 miles of crack sealing that was supposed to start Monday too. That's it.
And
Bill?
I don't have any meeting to report.
All right. I know Tim does.
Yep, I do.
Okay.
I'd first just make a comment on the presentation regarding the 2020 census. We just heard that how important it is that everyone who can be counted is counted, and hopefully the Isabella County local governmental agencies all come together to make a strong, unified effort to count all that can be counted. I did attend the Isabella County Board of Commissioners meeting on August 6th. 4 things I'll list that went on there was there was approval to purchase for the Sheriff's Department a police command vehicle. They felt they got a very fair price to buy this mobile unit that will be outfitted with communications and devices, not necessarily a vehicle that will be used in day-to-day patrols, but actually a command center vehicle if there's a larger incident of sorts that would need that type of command center. Also, a very large budget item was passed, just shy of $2 million is approved, the fiscal year 2020 county child care budget, which is a budget that is with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services and the Isabella County Trial Court, Circuit Court Family Division, October 1st, 2019 through September 30th, 2020. And again, that is just shy of $2 million, 199, or 1,992,000 and some change in that budget.
Big figure.
Yeah, very large expense. Also, there was a grant application approved that has a value of about $2,500 with the Michigan Council for Arts, Cultural Affairs. It's a grant application that the county's been involved in for a number of years, and they, again, feel it's a good value and will be applying for that grant. And also, the board in a unanimous motion 7-0 passed an expansion to be more inclusive in an effort to eliminate discriminations with the expansion and verbiage of the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act. The board passed that fully. And a comment was made that the Restoration House has moved to 120 Pine Street. We've had a speaker in from the past from the Restoration House talk to us. They are now located again at 120 Pine Street in Mount Pleasant.
What building is that, Tim?
You know, I'm not-
Pine Street's
you
kind
know,
of
yeah,
like over on
like-
that far east
Yeah.
side, or west side.
They left the
Yeah.
Victory Church area, that building? I didn't realize they were leaving.
Well,
They
No,
were
it's
in that-
like,
No.
Pine Street is like one of those little,
Yeah.
almost to the railroad tracks.
Right, right.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of what building that could be.
going to be
South of Broadway.
like the
Mhm.
old Gover City. If
Yeah.
you're familiar
Yeah.
with that building
There you go.
would possibly be the location, but it's right in that vicinity.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
across from like the Blackstone.
Yeah.
In that area.
In that area. That's exactly where it is, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Although that would be at
Centennial
Michigan
Hall,
Avenue.
so yeah, it's the Gover City building.
Grover City building, not
Yeah.
kitty corner from the brick one. There's another form of
Okay.
Grover City.
The old one that takes us back to our youth.
Yeah, the wood frame.
Centennial Hall, something engraving. All in that area.
All
So
right.
thank you.
I see we got a new judge, Tim.
Yes.
Who's the new judge?
Sarah Nago.
Sarah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay.
So she's
got
on the
named
circuit
yesterday
court.
afternoon.
She was just appointed by Whitmer, and she will be on there. I believe she serves this now until she comes up for in the next election, so November already of 2020.
20.
Okay,
She will be up for re-election, but then if she gets elected, then it'll be a 6-year term.
okay, and that's Paul Chamberlain's
Right.
seat, right?
All right.
Okay.
She was just named public defender too.
Mm-hmm.
So now she's kind of moved up within a month.
Yeah.
So,
And she does a lot of work with the indigent population, and she's
Yeah.
submitted some programs statewide for that as well.
Well, congratulations on Judge Chamberlain on his retirement.
Mhm.
So, hope he has a long and prosperous retirement. All right, let's move on to consent agenda. We have a
I'll make-
motion on the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion
Go ahead.
to approve the consent agenda.
I'll support it.
Who checked,
Yeah, I looked everything over, everything looks good.
okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions before we put this to vote? All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We move on to item 10, new business. This will be a quick one. This is going to be approval of the FY 2019 budget amendment for amendment number one for the general fund, fire fund, tribal 2% grants fund, east EDA fund, west EDA fund, sewer fund, and water fund. I'll just throw my feet up and leave it to you.
only
Limited to
40
3 minutes, Mark?
I can do it as quick as you'd like. The memo begins on page 21 of your agenda packet. This is our biannual budget amendment. We do one around mid-year and then another one by the end of the year. Budget amendments are required under the Uniform Budget Act, and they also are called for just from sound financial management purposes. I'll just go through some of the highlights in terms of the general fund revenue. We're increasing zoning permit revenue by $6,000, state shared revenue increasing by $20,000, user fees for baseball field rentals of $2,000, increased interest earnings in the amount of $50,000 are all being recognized. Total general fund revenue increase of $68,500. On the expense side of the general fund, the manager's department, $1,400 to support the manager's pay increase that was approved by the board earlier this year, $5,100 for the salary study expenditures, $8,800 for community promotion, the chamber directory ad, community branding initiative, epicenter e-publication participation. We're also increasing the budget in the accounting department, $4,500 for some office furnishings that we needed to make for the property tax specialist position as well as the accounting specialist position. We're increasing the budget in the IT department, $7,900 to cover some Adobe subscriptions that were needed in the organization, some annual fiber internet fees. We are purchasing a new iPad for field, to be used out in the field for the assessing department that will allow them to do their work out in the field, do their data entry out in the field, and then come back and download it into the BSNA software. In the assessing department, $13,000 for appraisals. We had several, more than several maybe, MTTs that we had to process this past year. And also, we've really put an emphasis on BS&A training throughout the organization, whether it's the assessing function or the property and zoning modules, the building modules. So we're increasing, you'll see several departments with budget increases that have to do with employee training. Also purchased a document scanner for the assessing office. Township Hall Budget Department, $26,100. The bulk of that is the additional cleanup day electronic recycling fees that I highlighted in a memo following that successful event. Defibrillators that were purchased earlier in the year are accounted for in the budget, and then also the new chairs that we're sitting in, and then a conference room table and chair on the other side of the partition. The Public Works Department contributions to the Road Commission are decreasing a net of $175,000. The gravel road improvement expenses came in a little lower than budget, and then with the Lincoln Road Broomfield upgrade being moved to 2020, we removed that item out of the 19 budget, but you will see it again in the 2020 budget. Parks and Recreation, we had in the budget for FY19 a $15,000 for a Parks Master Plan update. We won't be able to get to that this year. Also in that department, you'll see funding for the defibrillators that were located at the two parks. Total net expenditures for all the adjustments, and all of them are outlined in detail in your memo. I just or in the agenda packet. I'm just hitting some of the highlights. The net increase to the expenditures, I'm sorry, it's a decrease, net decrease of $67,100 decrease to the expenditure side. The net impact of the revenues and expenses on the general fund is to increase projected year-end fund balance by $135,000 compared to the originally adopted budget. Next is the EDA, the East DDA Fund, managed by the EDA. We're increasing the revenues in that fund by $25,000 for state aid. Interest earnings increasing by $8,000, total net revenue to the good of $33,000 in this budget amendment. On the expense side, we're increasing the budget by $5,500 for compliance. There's a new act, Public Act 57. It's, I don't know, 70 pages long or so, and we need to make sure that the EDA is complying with the new Public Act, because what's at risk is the loss of the capturing the tax increment revenue. So we're getting some outside support to make sure we have all our ducks in a row there. Also increased their budget. They increased their contribution to the Mid-Michigan Development Corporation, $3,500 for snow plowing on the West Pickard corridor. The EDA pays for snow plowing on the sidewalks along that corridor. Also increased their budget to cover some fertilization and weed abatement in the curb lawn, and $18,000 to cover some streetlight repairs that were needed along Pickard, and a new light pole that we needed to purchase and install that was taken out by a car accident about a year ago. Took about a year to get that thing ordered and finally installed. The total additional expenditures in the East DDA fund are $45,400 for a net impact to the fund to reduce the projected year-end fund balance by $12,400 compared to the original budget. The EDA did approve this budget amendment and a recommendation to this body here for your approval back at their June meeting. The West DDA, their revenues increasing for interest income by $7,000. On the expense side, similar increases. They share in the PA 57 compliance and the Mid-Michigan Development Corp contribution. Also, they're funding the Lincoln Road repaving project out here from Pickard South to M20. Those bids came in a little higher than was originally budgeted for, $30,000, so that's accounted for here. And then there's $180,000 that was, the West DDA is a partner in the pump station number 14 project that's being paid for by the sewer fund. And so some of that work was originally budgeted in 18. It didn't get done. Those unspent funds rolled to fund balance. They're being now reappropriated in the 19 budget. Total net additional expenditures of $216,000 in the West DDA fund for a net impact to the fund of a reduction of projected year-end fund balance by $209,000. Again, the EDA approved this budget amendment and the recommendation that you all approve it at their June meeting. The tribal 2% fund, with the awarding of the spring 2019 contribution from the tribe for the connector pathway of $150,000, we needed to amend the budget to reflect that. Also, and that's on the revenue side and on the expense side. And then also interest earnings in the fund were increasing by a little over $3,000. That's the net impact of the budget amendment on the tribal fund is the $3,200 for the interest income. On the sewer side, sewer fund side, we're recognizing the contribution from the West DDA for the pump station rehab project I mentioned just a moment ago. Fines and forfeiture revenue in the amount of $7,500. We're increasing the budget by interest earnings plus $30,000. We had a trade-in on one of the older trucks that we replaced, $4,500. So there's total net revenue into the sewer fund of $244,000 reflected in this budget amendment. On the expense side, the water and sewer fund and general fund all contributed to the salary study. Much of that was paid for in 18, but then some of it carried over to 19, so we're accounting for that. The project budget didn't change, it's just which fiscal year it was being funded out of. Again, there were some defibrillator purchases that were bought by the sewer system for their buildings that are in this budget. Some repairs to vehicles that were in accidents or sitting out here in the parking lot, and there was an accident at the corner and cars spun into our parking lot and did some damage to vehicles. So that those repairs are being recognized in this budget. Some of them were covered by insurance, and you see the recognition of the insurance on the revenue side as well in this budget amendment. Mentioned the new vehicle, $25,000 for the truck that was originally in the 18 budget. The actual expense, the cutting of the check, did not occur till 2019, so we had to do some adjustments there between fiscal years And the total net expenses are decreasing in this fund by $188,760. The net impact of this budget amendment is to increase the projected year-end fund balance by $55,900 in this fund. And then lastly is the water fund, again, kind of the same story. Interest income increasing by $36,000, recognizing state grants of $14,000 for a wellhead protection grant program. That program is $28,000. You'll see that on the expense side. The grant funds 50% of that. That's why you're seeing $14,000 on the revenue side. Recognizing the East DDA participated with the water main loop project that was done out on Pickerton, kind of towards Somerton. That was a joint project between the East DDA and the water fund. And so that participation agreement, the funding from East DDA, we're accounting for in this revenue budget amendment. Total net revenue adjustments is an increase of $80,300 in the water fund. On the expense side, professional and contractual line item is increasing by $11,400. Their portion of the salary expenses that were rolled over to 2019 had a bit of an increase in the annual cleaning contract by Romanoff Cleaning Services, and then some support fees for the BS&A utility billing software. You'll also see increases on the safety budget for defibrillators in this fund as well. Vehicle maintenance, many of the vehicles are shared between expense between the water and sewer fund, so you'll see that in this budget on the expense side as well. We had a high service pump rotor that was an emergency purchase, I want to say back in February. I sent you all an email about it. We're accounting for that activity in the amount of $25,000 in this budget amendment. Chlorine, you recall the chlorine upgrade to the chlorine equipment and associated components. That's $40,000 that the project was approved. At the time, we indicated there'd be a budget amendment that would come through, and this is where you're seeing that. The net impact of all the expenditures is an increase of $303,000 in the water fund, and it's a net to the fund. A net impact is a decrease in projected year-end fund balance of $222,000 compared to the originally adopted budget. So those are the highlights, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Just one little question I have, the light repair on the East DDA. Was that for the poles or the LED lights or a combination of both?
There are several things going on with the lighting. EDA owns the lights. They own the poles. And trying to keep them operational takes a bit of money, maintenance. I'm not sure what the type of bulb is. Ben, you may know.
The LEDs.
LEDs. But the majority of this money is a pole that was taken out by a vehicle that spun out last winter, took the pole out. Then we had to order it, pay for it. It's about I want to say $18,000.
Yeah, we had an insurance claim on that too, didn't we?
Much of that was covered by insurance.
Thanks, Mark.
Well, I'm impressed with the, the bang for the money that we get when you look through all the different funds and what projects we've done. I mean, we continue to maintain a positive balance in every one of the funds, and yet we continue to provide quality services and projects for our citizens and for the community. I think that's quite an accomplishment. Also, the other thing I was just impressed with is I tallied up the interest income that the cumulative that the funds had gotten for the year from the deposits, and that's $164,200, which is in itself pretty remarkable. That's the interest that we earned on some of our excess monies. So I think I have to say we're doing pretty good.
Anybody else? All right, let's close that item and move on to item B.
We need.
Or do we have to approve this? I'm sorry. How can I forget that? Okay, so,
Well, I'll make the motion
Yep.
then that we approve this fiscal year 2019 budget amendment number 1 for the general fund, the fire fund, tribal 2% grant fund, the East DDA fund, the West DDA fund, the sewer fund, and the water fund.
Support.
all right. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll put this up for vote. And this would be to approve the budget amendments, number 1, for the general fund, fire fund, tribal 2% grants fund, East DDA fund, West DDA fund, sewer fund, and the water fund. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
you.
Amendments are approved. Item B. This is to approve SUP 2019-04, group daycare home located at 5115 Stirrup.
Giddy up.
This is for a group daycare facility. In May, the property was rezoned from R5 to R2B. The intent of the owner was to seek, following the successful rezoning, a special use permit to operate a group daycare home. In July, the Planning Commission held a public hearing, and then after their deliberations, voted to recommend approval of this special use permit to the Board of Trustees on the condition that the applicant, 1, obtain a license from the state of Michigan, and then 2, they also needed to obtain a dimensional variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. They have obtained the dimensional variance at the ZBA meeting held earlier this month. And so now it is in front of you for consideration of the special condition use permit.
I'd make a motion that we approve SUP 2019-04, a group daycare home located at 5115 Stirrup, on the conditions that a license is obtained for the state of Michigan, a dimensional variance is obtained from the ZBA, and a site sketch of the home and property is staff approved.
Support.
Discussion?
Well, it's been before us many times, so I think we're very familiar with what they're trying to do, and again, the neighbors were approving of it. There was no opposition. It certainly fits into the context, and the need for the service is certainly there. So I think it's a very good use of a special use permit. So,
I agree, she's done everything she's needed to do.
yes.
All right. Further discussion?
I did just want to, I'm leaving it up to you guys, but I actually know some of these statewide, the licensed child care workers in the area, one of which is a family member. So if you guys want me to recuse myself, I will. But I mean, it has nothing to do with this person. It's just they have to check everybody's daycare in the area, and one of which is a family member. So I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware,
Yeah.
so.
I think disclosure is good, but you're fine to
Right.
to be voting.
It's a special use, we have to go on the 10 steps, right?
Oh,
And I will say that the planning commission did review this special condition using all of the requirements. They went through them individually. They passed all of them. And so with that being said, you might just indicate in a motion that was acknowledged, so that otherwise you gotta go through it 1 through
Right.
10.
And we also did the special use criteria for this as well, at one point, I believe. Did we not?
I don't think we did for this one.
That we didn't?
I don't
We did in the
think you
planning
did.
commission, but I don't know
Okay, the
about
planning
the
commission
other
has
ones
done
together.
it,
But
and,
we should
and
still
we've
do
had
it.
this before us multiple times. I mean, I don't see any need to have to go through the formality of it unless the board feels otherwise.
The planning commission gave us a good recommendation, so.
Mhm. The only thing would be from a matter of consistency.
Yeah.
You
Leave it
know,
10,
and I
yeah.
think that if we should probably, I don't have that in front of me.
It's
We
page
could probably.
70.
It's on page
Page 70.
70 of your
Okay.
agenda packet.
Okay,
You could
then,
just read through them.
I think we should
Okay.
probably, I won't
Okay.
go individually like I do normally.
Yeah.
I'll just go through as a group. And if anybody has any issues with these, then they can speak up. Okay. The general requirements for special uses. The use, number one, the special use shall be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained in a manner harmonious with the character of the adjacent property and the surrounding area. Do we feel that's in agreement?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yes. The special use shall not change the essential character of the surrounding area.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yes?
Yes.
The special use shall not interfere with the general enjoyment of adjacent property.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. The special use shall not be hazardous to adjacent property or involve uses, activities, materials, or equipment that will be detrimental to the health, safety, or welfare of persons or property through the excessive production of traffic noise, smoke, odor, fumes, or glare.
Correct.
Correct.
Correct. You might have a little noise from the kids, but that's
Yeah.
about it, right?
Burning brownies.
And unless they're smokers too, I don't know. We might have some problem. Well, baby
Oh,
Huey
hope not.
action, right?
Oh my God.
Okay, sorry. The special use shall be adequately served by essential public facilities or services, and it shall be demonstrated that the person responsible for the proposed special use shall be able to continually provide adequate services and facilities to deemed essential to the special use under consideration. The said facilities or services shall be approved by the Central Michigan District Health Department.
Yes, and even more so,
Obviously,
they have
that's gonna be a
state-
condition
state
for
licensing and
continued-
everything.
Yeah. When deemed necessary by the Township Board or Planning Commission, the use shall be adequately screened by distance and landscaping to protect the rights of all adjoining property.
Yes.
The Township Board or Planning Commission, in connection with approval of any application, may require a reasonable undertaking by the applicant to guarantee and assure by agreement, including a performance bond, to be posted by the applicant or by some other reasonable surety arrangement at appropriate stages of the plan development, that the development will be executed in accordance with the approved plan. Obviously, that's going to be,
Yes.
Yes.
yes. That such use shall be, or will be, an asset to the township.
Yes.
Yes. Requirements and conditions of each individual special use permitted shall be complied with unless otherwise mentioned within this section.
Yes.
Yes. Any special use permit may be revoked by the Union Township Board upon recommendation of the Union Township Planning Commission whenever the operation fails to comply with any of the required conditions or may be subject to the penalties of this ordinance. A, approval of the special use permit shall be valid regardless of change of ownership, provided that all terms and conditions of the special permit are met by any subsequent owner. And B, in instances where development authorized by a special use permit has not commenced within 1 year from the date of issuance, the permit may be reconsidered and/or voided at a regularly called meeting of the Planning Commission.
All right.
Yes.
Yes. We also have to do the 34J, which is for group day care homes.
Group day homes, okay. Number 1, group daycare homes are only located within Ag, R1, R2A, R2B, and R3 districts.
Right, and the rezoning accomplished that.
The home shall not be located closer than 1,500 feet to any of the following. A, another licensed group daycare home.
No.
Another adult foster care small group home or large group home licensed under the Adult Foster Care Facility Licensing Act, Act 2018, and Public Acts of 1979. A facility offering substance abuse treatment and rehabilitation service to 7 or more people licensed under Article 6 of the Public Health Code, Act 368 of the Public Acts of 1978. Okay. A community correction center, resident home, halfway house, or other similar facility that houses an inmate population under the jurisdiction of the Department of Corrections.
Passes that.
Yeah. Group daycare homes must have appropriate fencing for the safety of the children in the group daycare center as determined by the Township zoning administrator. Group daycare homes must maintain the property consistent with visible characteristics of the neighborhood as determined by the zoning administrator. Group daycare homes do not exceed 16 hours of operation during a 24-hour period. 1 off-street parking space must be provided for each employee not residing in the residential home. Okay, I'm sure that one's being followed.
Yeah, and these have all been approved by the planning commission.
Okay.
They reviewed
1
this.
sign announcing the service shall be permitted as regulated in section 11.7. All right.
And I will add, I failed to mention that one of the other conditions by the Planning Commission, they determined that a full site plan was not required or needed, but that a sketch of the property and a review of these type of rules be done by the zoning administrator, so all those things will be accounted for.
Okay. All right.
I left it up to the board.
Oh, so we gotta do a roll call, and is Rice recusing herself? No,
Is she? Are you recusing yourself?
I was leaving it up to the board.
well, she's
No,
related.
you're-
And that,
We
so,
said-
Yeah, you,
She's
sir, you're
related to
fine.
them.
You're fine.
so.
But she's related to them, but she has to be getting some type of financial.
Okay.
I'm,
Just making
yeah,
sure.
I'm
Gain from
I'm
that.
only,
Yeah,
re-
but that's a good
and,
point.
and it's,
Yeah.
I'm only related to one of the surrounding daycares, not anyone with this particular daycare.
Right, that's right. But you have no vested interest in that
Correct.
daycare, so
Correct.
that's the reason for recusal.
Or relative.
Yeah.
I mean, it's up to
And
you.
it is
Yeah.
relative, and
It's
that's
up to
why,
you. If you feel
that's
better
why I,
recusing, I don't think it's
Where
gonna
you're
affect
comfortable
anything.
with.
I was gonna say, it doesn't matter to me. I'm fine either way. So I wanted to make sure you guys knew that I am related to someone who works, or who has their own daycare and is on the list of the other daycares. So that's the only reason why I brought it up.
Oh, I don't think that matters.
From a business standpoint, I guess that'd be competition, so, I mean, it's up
Correct.
to you.
So.
Do you feel like you, I mean, like I said, I don't think it's gonna affect the
I
vote.
think
I was gonna say, I don't think it'll affect.
Accuse yourself.
Why don't you just recuse yourself?
Okay, then I will recuse myself.
Okay, Supervisor Gunning,
Yes.
Trustee Hauk,
Yes.
Trustee Micus.
Yes.
Trustee Lannan.
Yes.
Trustee Worley.
Yes.
Clerk Cody, yes. Rice,
This feels
recuse
weird.
yourself.
All right. Item C, introduce zoning map amendment ordinance 2019-05 for first reading and publish the notice to adopt ordinance 2019-05 on August 28th, 2019.
So this is a parcel that's part of the what I'll call the Rosewood Development Project. It was originally approved back in 2016. The applicant, Rosewood Development Company, LLC, applied to rezone the subject property from R3A to OS. This property is currently vacant. The intended use is as a medical office facility. There was an original rezoning request done back in April of 2019 that was subsequently withdrawn when it became apparent to the applicant that the neighborhood, many of the folks in the neighboring area, were objecting to the rezoning. So they decided to withdraw their application and then met with the local community in the neighborhood. And then what we have before us now is a new application for rezoning, and they're rezoning essentially a smaller footprint of the parcel. The Planning Commission, following a public hearing, reviewed the request and voted to recommend to the Board of Trustees approve the rezoning request. This is just the introduction for first reading, and if you do decide to introduce it as a first reading, then you'll also be instructing us by definition to publish it for final consideration at your August 28th meeting.
All right. Thank you, Mark.
I'll make a motion to introduce zoning map amendment ordinance 2019-05 for the first reading and publish a notice to adopt the ordinance in the 2019-05 on August 28th, 2019.
Support.
Okay, motion support, discussion? Seeing none?
All right, it sounds like, the property owner made the real important steps of working with the community, coming to a compromise. It's moving through our system, planning commission, et cetera. I'd be in support of this, favorably.
Further discussion? All right. Let's put this up for vote. This will be the introduced zoning map amendment ordinance 2019-05 for first reading. Published notice to adopt ordinance 2019-05 on August 28th of 2019. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No opposition. Motion carries. And we move on to item 11. Extended public comment. This is going to be regarded to 5 minutes regarding anything the people in this audience want to talk about.
Camera pans to
Yeah,
audience.
and
No
see
one-
nobody running to the podium. And we see our zoning and planning administrators dodging out of the building as we speak.
Nah, he's running to the
He's
mic.
running to the podium or something, I'm not sure. So we close public comment at this point in time, and we move to manager's comments, item 12. Mark?
Thank you, and I do have just a few. We've begun a review of all the exempt, the properties that are currently exempt from taxation. We've initiated a review process of that. There's approximately 150 exempt parcels of property in the township. Many of those are government buildings like this. Others are churches. We sent out about 75 letters. The ones that we didn't send out were the obvious ones: township property, the county administration building, the schools. What was left, though, we sent out a letter and an application for the property owners to complete. Like I said, there were 72 of those sent out, and they've begun to trickle in. There is there's guidance by within the state code, the General Property Tax Act, regarding what should be exempt and what should not be. So assessing area will go through those and review those applications. You know, it's possible that there are a few that are currently exempt that may need to be deemed that non-exempt, so they'd be put back on the property roll. But we'll go through that process. Lincoln Road was mentioned just a few minutes ago. The 2 culverts were replaced last week. It was scheduled to start the milling and resurfacing this week. We were notified yesterday maybe that that's been kicked out to the following week. And then a reminder of the joint meeting on August 27th with all the boards and commissions. That's going to be located at the Commission on Aging. I believe that's 7 p.m. All the boards have received invitations to that. They've been asked to make a short presentation. I haven't got a lot of responses back yet, but there's still time. And I would imagine most would appear. And then I also want to thank you all for the input I've received, and I think I've received it from everybody now, on the 2020 budget development input. I have yet to compile all of that, but I will be, and then I'll be sending it out to you, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
All right, final board comment. Jim?
My only comment would be that I understand or believe to be true that our Union Township fire truck purchase is expected for delivery in February of 2020. Therefore, we should probably be continuing to add revenue on the interest income side by the way we decided to pay for that. So, that's all I have to share. Thanks.
I have nothing to add then.
I'm fine.
Nothing.
Nothing?
The only thing I gotta say is that I think, Bill, you get to have a ride, first ride in the truck, right?
I know, why?
What? Because you're pretty excited about that truck.
You get to lead the
I figure the
parade.
least they can do is give him the first ride in the truck.
lead
The
the
road
parade.
commission, did they give you a ride in that big thing yet, or what?
Wasn't it originally supposed to be in October?
Things happen.
There you go. We'll have to work on that one.
He wants it in October.
Maybe we should wear a hat. All right, so we move from 13 to item 14, which is a closed session. So we need to have
Our only audience member leave.
a, yep,
I have to recuse myself from this one.
okay. You get to leave early. Although you have to be here for adjournment.
You have to
Yeah, you
adjourn
do.
us.
No, I don't.
Don't you guys think
Who
she has to be here for adjournment? So you should sit out in the hallway. All right, so we
Who's
need to have a
supposed
motion to
well,
go into closed
Who's supposed
session.
to take minutes?
Who's making?
I
the
can't
motion?
take minutes.
Right, no, that's why I'm asking who needs to take minutes while during closed session.
You can do it.
Me can do, I can do it? Okay. Me can do it.
Okay,
Wow.
so this would be a motion to go into closed session
Right.
to discuss our collective bargaining agreement negotiation strategy. So we need to have somebody make that motion.
Yeah, right.
So we can move into closed
So
session.
moved, then.
All right,
Support,
all right, it's motion support. All in favor moving into closed session?
No, no.
no,
No?
Roll call.
roll
Roll
call.
call. Ah, gotcha.
Supervisor Gunning?
Yes.
Treasurer Rice?
Yes.
Trustee Hauk?
Yes.
Trustee Micus?
Yes.
Trustee Lannan?
Yes.
Trustee Worley?
Yes.
You're not out of here yet?